and then he says no.
Dad?
And then he's like, okay, and then...
Dad?
Okay, gotta...
Go away.
We're having birthday cake.
Oh, you caught me typing the script for Marvel's Daily Bugle in the bathtub smoking a cigarette.
It's my birthday.
The only birthday we celebrate in this house is the anniversary of Smokey's Videos. I thought that would be funnier than I think it actually is. Marvel's Daily Bugle is a sort of predecessor to Gotham Central from DC, in that they each follow an organization full of normal people doing regular stuff in a comic book world. And no, this isn't drawn by Mike Mignola. There was a trend in like the, I think, mid to late 90s, I want to say, where there was a fair amount of artists who started copying Mignola's art style. Artists such as Carl Kerschel and etc. Look, I didn't bother looking up any other examples, but based on my long box diving at various comic book stores and conventions, I know what I'm talking about. And this story was actually voted on by my Patreon page. Because at the $5 tier, each month you'll get to vote on a what is topic, and I'll have to do it. When I started writing this, I only had one patron at that level, and he was going mad with power. But now, I have 2 patrons at that level, so I don't know what's gonna happen if there's a tie. And before I get started, here are the pluggy plugs. I have a Patreon, and on this Patreon, I will be uploading pages from my work-in-progress horror western graphic novel, A Dead Fish in the Grass. It is probably going to be rated R if it was a movie, so don't go in here if you're under the age of 18. It's pretty graphic, I'll say that. All 166 pages have been completely illustrated already. All that I'm doing now is digitally editing and lettering them. My plan is to get it published and sold in a tangible form, but until that happens, I'll just be uploading a couple pages to my Patreon each week. I will also be uploading pages from Destructo Boy and Other Exciting Tales there as well. Destructo Boy and Other Exciting Tales is a 40-page anthology made up of 3 stories that got published after I won a local contest last year. It is still on sale for $19.99 plus shipping in the description below. For $2 a month, you get access to Destructo Boy pages that I will be uploading each week. And at the $3 tier, you'll have access to both Destructo Boy and A Dead Fish in the Grass. At $5, you get something else. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but it'll be on the screen. Look at it, here's all the tiers. Released in 1996, written by Paul Grist, with art by Carl Kerschel, and inked by Greg Adams, this is the Daily Bugle front page. The book, which is printed in the closest possible quality of an actual newspaper, not that that's a diss, I actually love it, begins with Ben Urich, the man whose name I cannot say the same way twice, and his new photographer Angela Yin, as they stake out and record some mobsters meeting at the Food Factory restaurant in New York. Ben goes inside, mic'd up, and eavesdrops on some mobsters' conversations where they're bitching about super criminals like the Kingpin, which is why one of them proposes a crime cartel between the regular crime families. But then one of them takes notice of Ben. Oh shit, look at that, he actually pronounced his last name phonetically. Unless he pronounced it wrong. Then we get an Indiana Jones scene where Ben runs away and yells for Angela to start the car. Cut to the Daily Bugle. Renowned and fan-favorite Daily Bugle character, Charlie Snow, gives a tour of the operation in a fourth wall-breaking scene. This is a running part of the series. I won't really include it because it's not very important, but I do really like this part. He walks the new employee through the city room and shows us the different members of the Bugle's reporting staff conducting their jobs, such as editor Robbie Robertson giving Betty Brant an assignment to interview Tommy Food, owner of the Food Factory restaurant chain. Or Ken Ellis, learning about transport authorities disregarding regulations. I won't cover that part of the storyline, it goes nowhere. Downstairs in the lobby, Ben and Angela return when a guy runs up behind her and steals her camera. Ben gives chase, but he's a chain-smoking news reporter, and he doesn't make it very far. Angela walks over to him and asks if he's okay. He huffs out an apology for not rescuing her camera, and Angela shows him the film rolls and says that she'll get over it. Cut to Betty Brant interviewing Tommy Food, or Feud. As Tommy gives an answer to one of her questions, shouting rises from the back kitchen. Tommy excuses himself, and Betty takes note of how odd it is that the restaurant is completely empty. Meanwhile, Ben and Angela develop her photos and try to figure out what's in them that the mobsters wanted so badly. Then they notice something in the background, and after blowing up the image, they discover Congressman Adams, and a woman who is not his wife. If you don't know who Congressman Adams is, don't worry, he was invented for this story. Ben takes his photos to Robbie Robertson's office, but Robbie says that they don't print gossip. The Daily Bugle only prints cold, hard facts. like what a menace Spider-Man is. Robbie says that they're going to need a lot more than just a photo to have a story, and then he tells Ben to go get him one. So Ben and Angela set out and eventually discover the alleged whereabouts of the mistress. A pool hall with a little devil face on the sign. Ben tells Angela to try the back, and after she slinks off into an alley, a man opens the door and tells Ben to come inside. Later, Betty leaves the food factory, and she hears a voice calling her over to an alley? This doesn't seem good. But Betty still goes over, and the fat man in a suit tells her that he has some information concerning the food factory. Then he asks her to meet him outside the Jiving Jumbo, or Jimbo, I can't remember, I might have spelled it incorrectly, at 7. Back in the other story, Angela climbs into a bathroom window and sneaks out into the pool hall, and she finds Ben being questioned by some mobsters about Susie, the porn star, and the mistress of Congressman Adams. The man in charge, Morgan Hall, explains to Ben that he also has photos of Adams and his mistress, so he's not going to let Ben go around making his blackmail public. Angela snaps some pics as Ben threatens to release the story if Morgan roughs him up at all. Morgan says that he can destroy Ben's photos with or without violence. Then Ben asks if he wants to see photos of himself beating up a reporter, splashed on the front page of the Bugle, and Morgan turns and spots Angela. Morgan sighs, orders his goons to let Ben go, and then takes the roll of film from Angela's camera before leaving. Then Ben races to a payphone and calls Robbie about the story. Really playing up your chances there, Ben. Jesus Christ, what if that didn't go that way? Later at the Bugle, Congressman Adams walks into the office of J. Jonah Jameson and asks why JJ called him here. Jameson says that he's enjoyed the Bugle's support for quite a while now, and that's why Jonah wanted Adams to have a chance to see what they're about to print in the edition of the paper that comes out tonight. Adams asks if there's some way for him to make these pictures disappear, but JJ says that they aren't the only ones with photos of Adams and his mistress. Although they may be the only ones with photos as PG-13 as these. JJ explains who Morgan Hall is and how he's going to blackmail Adams. Then he tells him that if they sit on this, then Adams will be in the pocket of the mob for the rest of his life. Adams cries out that this isn't fair and he's the victim and asks for some kind of chance. And Jonah tells him that this is his chance. Down in the printing room, Charlie finishes his tour of the building as the paper with the front page reading "Exposed" is printed and packaged. Later that night at the Jiving Jimbo Bar and Grill, Betty sits down at the bar waiting for Peter Parker. She watches a press conference of Adams and his fake smile-giving wife. Then the anchor switches to discussing Spider-Man's recent rescue of a family in a fire. Betty starts getting hit on by a fat, greasy drunk guy, just as Peter Parker, freelance photographer, shows up. Just in the nick of time. Like a superhero. Peter apologizes for being late, and they walk to where Betty is meeting the mystery man. The short, stocky man walks out of the darkness of the alley, and as he's about to tell her what he knows, a car drives by, and the occupants open fire. Peter is able to tackle Betty out of the way, but the man is gunned down and killed. The next day at the Bugle, we see how Charlie Snow deals with the constant barrage of tragedy that reporters and journalists have to deal with. Charlie quickly hides his liquor back in his desk as JJ storms across the bullpen and into Robbie's office and exclaims,
"What's the meaning of this? This is supposed to be a newspaper, not some comic book. If I hadn't checked the proofs, this garbage would have been all over the city tonight."
"Parker got us some good shots, Jonah. Words and pictures telling the news, it's what we do."
"You're missing the point, Robbie. Another disaster and that glory hound is on the spot. I wouldn't put it past him to have stage managed the whole thing. That's what we should be investigating."
That is a very interesting angle, Jonah. But everyone's already on assignment. No one's free to cover.
"I'm free. Put me on." The smoke still hangs heavy in the air, barely broken by the sunlight shafts through broken window frames. Yeah, that's it. Well, maybe not two brokens in the same sentence. Short hours ago, this building was a fiery oven, a raging inferno. That water's gonna ruin these suede prugs. What manner of man would endanger people's lives like this? Not a man. An insect. A spider.
Hey, you can't be in here. Back at the Bugle, Charlie sits at his desk working on a 2,000-word assignment on the mayor's new initiative to tackle homelessness, utterly defeated by writer's block. Ken walks over and says that Robbie asked him to see if Charlie needed any help. Charlie shouts in anger over this. He's a seasoned reporter, not Ken. He knows how to write a goddamn story. So much so does he scream that Robbie comes out of his office and asks what's happening. Charlie exclaims that if Ken wants to tell the story, he can take it, and storms out. Cut to the Williams development office. JJ meets with Niles Williams about one of his tenements on the Lower East Side, the very one that burnt down yesterday. Niles apologizes for how roughly his security guard treated JJ and explains that this is the 4th property some arsonist has burnt down in the past 6 weeks. Jameson asks if Williams thinks that someone is targeting him. Niles says that they've had some problems with a few tenants, so it is possible. Their main suspect is a man named Jake Carlton, who has started a campaign against the Williams Development Company. Then Niles shows JJ a model of their latest project, the Titanic office, retail, and residential space, Williams Plaza. Then Niles invites JJ to an investors party he's holding later that afternoon. And at the food factory, Betty Brant raps on the door until Tommy Feud answers and says that they're closed due to family issues. Betty tells him that she was with his brother when he was killed, and he invites her inside. At a Williams tenement in Greenwich, JJ huffs up the stairwell as he hunts down the prime suspect for these fire attacks, Jake Carlton. Carlton lets JJ come inside and says that he wondered how long it would take until someone found him. Then he hands JJ all of the files and records of complaints and photos he has of their living space. JJ asks what the hell he's talking about, and Jake says that he and everybody else in the building are living in terrible conditions, and it's all due to a negligent landlord who refuses to conform to even the most basic safety standards. Then he asks JJ why he's there, and JJ exclaims that he's here to find out if he's an arsonist. Elsewhere in the room, Carlton's daughter watches TV as the men argue. Suddenly, the television shuts off, and the electrical outlet buzzes. So she crawls over to it and taps it with her finger. And she is rocketed back by electricity. Carlton runs over to his daughter, who is still alive and alright, as Jameson asks if he left something on the stove. He turns around and discovers a massive fire beginning to break out. JJ yells for them to go and grab an extinguisher, but Carlton says that there aren't any in the building. JJ rips his cashmere coat off and attempts to kill the fire with it as he yells for the man to call 911. And back at the food factory, Tommy paces back and forth, lamenting the death of his brother. Betty asks what he'll do with the business now, and Tommy says that their dream will go on because that's what Jimmy would have wanted. Then he asks if Jimmy happened to say anything to her, anything at all. She apologizes and says that he never got the chance to actually speak, and she was actually hoping that Tommy would be able to help her. She again apologizes for intruding, gives her condolences, and then leaves.
Fire! Fire! Move it! Down the hall and down the stairs! Now!
I have to go back! My comic collection!
Leave it! The fire crews are on the scene in minutes, but they're already too late. Everyone gets out alive, but these people have lost their possessions. What little they had. Photographs, letters, intangible things that cannot be replaced. And me, I've lost something more valuable than a cashmere coat.
Across town at Clancy's bar, Charlie takes a shot. Ken shows up and says that he went through Charlie's notes. Then Charlie berates him and says that Ken isn't a reporter. He's just a jumped up little office boy. Reporting isn't on notepads or computer screens. It's in your mind. Then Charlie tells Ken that he's forgotten more about reporting than Ken will ever learn. And Ken says, "No, you didn't. You just forgot," and walks out. Later that afternoon, JJ crashes the rich investors party. Niles welcomes him, and JJ says that he almost didn't make it. Then he walks over and looks at the little model of the Williams Plaza. He grabs a pamphlet about the project, reads it, and says,
"This desirable Manhattan location, that's the site of one of your properties that got burned down last month, isn't it?"
"I believe in making an advantage out of a disadvantage, Jonah."
"I see. Only, I'm wondering, who are the disadvantaged you're taking advantage of?"
"I'm sorry."
"I just spent the afternoon in what's left of one of your tenement blocks. I've seen the conditions you force your tenants to live in. It's only luck nobody's died in them yet."
"Well, if conditions are so bad, how come I don't hear any complaints?"
"Don't worry, Niles. You will."
At the Bugle, Robbie finishes reading Jonah's article and says that it's very powerful. Only they can't use it. Williams placed a bogus restraining order on JJ and the Bugle, so until their lawyer, Nelson, can get it cleared, they can't run it. And JJ asks what the front page will hold. Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Late at night in the Bugle bullpen, Charlie sits in front of his computer, wondering what happened to that fire, that passion, that commitment that he once had. But then, a different kind of fire stirs inside of him, and his fingers begin making contact with the keyboard. As Charlie Snow works his way out of the hole he's in, Betty Brant digs herself a deeper one as she returns to her apartment and finds it completely ransacked. She runs to her landline and calls emergency services as a hand grabs her from behind. At the food factory, Betty sits across from Tommy. He explains to her that the restaurant was really all Jimmy's dream. They both wanted to open a restaurant that was warm and had heart, a place where customers could go for a great bite to eat and would be met by a friendly face. And then he repositions the revolver in his hand, and he tells her that you don't always get what you want. And at Betty's apartment, Angela phones Robbie and tells him about the situation. Back across town, Tommy continues his story. Jimmy was the cook, he was the businessman. Tommy raised the capital so they could open their restaurant, but it just wouldn't work. They weren't getting the customers they needed to keep afloat. They needed more capital, more promotion. And Tommy just wanted a way to make his brother's dream come true, so he had to find new investors. But when Jimmy found out just where exactly the money was coming from, he didn't want to have anything to do with it. Tommy shouts that his brother was an artist, a dreamer, someone who didn't understand that compromises had to be made. Then he aims his revolver and pulls the trigger. At the Bugle, JJ assembles his core team concerning the Betty Brant situation. Robbie says that she was on the food factory assignment and she was supposed to be interviewing one of the owners this week. JJ orders Ann McIntosh to go through all the papers on Betty's desk, Ben Urich to go through her Rolodex and figure out who she met with last. Charlie will help him. And before he can continue, someone runs into the office and tells him that Spider-Man is fighting the Vulture and there's a report of a gunshot at the food factory downtown. JJ tells him to get Parker on that Spider-Man crap and tells Charlie to head downtown to the restaurant. After everyone leaves, JJ rests against the doorway and Robbie tells him not to worry. Back at the restaurant, Tommy looks at the now damaged photograph of he and his brother. He says they weren't supposed to hurt Jimmy, just frighten him. But Jimmy had gotten a hold of the accounts of their backers. Then he begs Betty to tell him what she did with the papers. Betty tells him that she has no idea what he's talking about, and Tommy exclaims, "Please, just give me the accounts!" Then everything can go back like before. Charlie, a born-again reporter, arrives at the food factory. He finds the front doors locked, but he manages to break into the back, and as he sneaks through the kitchen, he realizes that this was the wrong week to stop drinking. In JJ's office, Ann hands him the food factory accounts. They were in an envelope addressed to Betty, mailed earlier in the week, and just sitting there on her desk. Ann says that the factory is making too much money and that it must be a money laundering operation. Then Angela comes in with a tape recording Betty made of her initial interview. And at the food factory, Charlie watches through the kitchen window when his phone goes off. He answers it as quickly as possible. Robbie tells him that the food factory is definitely involved in Betty's disappearance and tells him to play it safe. Charlie says, sure thing, as Tommy Feud holds a revolver to his face. Meanwhile, Ben Urich arrives at the pool hall with the devil's face on it. Morgan Hall lets him in and asks what Ben wants. Ben asks what Morgan knows about Betty Brant, the reporter working on a piece about the food factory, the same place where Ben caught Morgan in his little breakfast club. The same place that Morgan has been laundering his money through. Morgan says that he has no idea what Ben's on about, and Ben brings out a tape recorder, the very one that recorded the Food brothers arguing with Morgan Hall in the kitchen of the restaurant.
So, what do we do now?
Do? We wait. That's what we do. My partner will be calling me. He'll know what to do. He always knows what to do. Morgan,
Hey, Tommy. I'm sorry about this, but the deal's off.
But...
Hey, no hard feelings, eh?
Mr. Hall...
Hey, why don't we do lunch? Let's do lunch. Not at your place. No offense, but the food's pretty lousy.
Outside, the NYPD and SWAT surround the restaurant. Charlie slowly walks through the front doors and tells the police that Food is inside with a gun and another hostage. Jimmy's dead. It's too late. It's too late for everything. Close your eyes, Miss Brandt. The SWAT converge on the door and break their way inside, quickly followed by Ben Urich, and inside they find Betty Brandt, standing still with her eyes shut in front of a ruined dream. The end.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of What Is. If you did, let me know what you thought of it in the comments below. What did you think of the fucking Daily Bugle news story? I personally love it. I think this was a great little book. I really wish that we could have gotten more series like this from Marvel. We did get that Frontline series in the 2000s, but that was really more focused around events that were happening at the time, if I remember correctly. A lot of Civil War, Secret Invasion, that crap. Not really as much of this, ground level action that's going on. Marvel was always supposed to be the world right outside of your window. And that's what this book is. It is just normal people doing normal things in a comic book superhero world. The realities that they are facing are pretty similar to ours. There just happens to be a giant man from space who tries to eat our planet sometimes. I also really enjoyed how this book manages to humanize Jameson a fair amount. He's still a dick in his own right, but you get to see that he is a good man. And, he just has a much different worldview than you would expect from someone who happens to be our protagonist. And he's also a pretty great reporter. Makes sense since, he did become the publisher of the Daily Bugle after all. Charlie Snow, Ben Urich, Betty Brandt, and all the other cast members get their chance to shine and experience some character growth, actually, for what little they are in this book. Overall, I would highly recommend this series. And yeah, I'm going to start doing these little things at the end. I sort of felt bad about just having, like a blank screen going on while I'm giving my recap and whatever else crap I talk about at the very end of the book. So I hope you enjoy this part. You get to look at my handsome mug, my chiseled jaw, my beautiful features. Yeah, and here's some more plugs.
As always, patreon.com/smokey'svideos has pages from Destructo Boy and other exciting tales, which you can access for as little as $2 a month. For $5 a month, you can read the pages from my 166-page graphic novel, A Dead Fish in the Grass. It is an 18-plus comic, so beware it's quite graphic, both violently and sexually. I've also started posting some work-in-progress pictures of another comic series I'm currently working on, which is my love letter to the Silver Age of comics, and comics in general. I just love comics so much, I just wish I could put myself into a comic. Anyway, I'll see you next time. Bye.
Who is Spider-Man? He's a criminal, that's who he is. A vigilante. Public menace. What's he doing on my front page?
Jameson is a page 6 problem.
We have a page 1 problem. Shut up.